What is up, my friends? Welcome back to the business of tattooing. This is episode 30, and it is also the second of our Spotlight series. This week, we're heading to Niles, Michigan to meet with a friend of mine, Ryan Adams. Ryan is a tattoo artist, shop owner, collector of all sorts of unique items, and just an all-around great guy. We're going to have a conversation with him around his business. He's going to show us some of the fun stuff that he collects. We're going to visit his oddity shop called Borrowed Time. And we're going to take a tour of his death museum, the Mourning Museum. That's right, Ryan has a museum focused on death. Inside is all sorts of unique items related to our dearly departed. I'm looking forward to getting into this episode, and I'm looking forward to sharing this with you. If you want to see the entire video, including the tour of the Oddities shop and the Mourning Museum, you'll have to head over to our YouTube channel, search for The Business of Tattooing, find episode 30, and you can see the whole thing. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for being a part of The Business of Tattooing. Please do me a favor, like this, leave a review, subscribe to the channels. All of this helps us keep creating this content for you, and we so appreciate your support. Without further ado, let's get into it. This is The Business of Tattooing. But yeah, I'm up here in Niles, Michigan today with Ryan Adams here at Hell or High Water, and it's good to spend some time with you today.
Yeah, same, man.
Thanks for making time.
Yeah, appreciate you offering.
Yeah. I've been coming up here for a few times now since you've been here at this new location. We did the windows over the summer.
Yep.
And just tell us a little bit about the shop. I mean, you got a lot of stuff going on in here.
Yeah, man. So I originally opened the shop in 21. And when I opened it, it was more of a private studio out in the middle of a village in Edwardsburg, Michigan. And when I opened it, I didn't want to have like that traditional tattoo shop feel. I wanted to just do something completely private, and just kind of different, odd. I'd always collected weird and unusual things. So, and after doing that a few years, we decided to move to more of a street shop, but kept most of the decor, from that. So it still has that same kind of, oddities, kind of weird vibe, but it's definitely more of a street shop now.
Yeah, so you got a lot of flash hanging on the walls, different kind of flash, and lots of taxidermy, which of course we'll get into with the oddity shop that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But even prior, when you were in Edwardsburg, I was at that shop. You still had a lot of taxidermy over there. You had a lot of the same collectibles, like the death kind of themed stuff in that shop. I remember seeing all that back there. Before all that though, I first met you when you were working at Marvel in South Bend.
Yeah. I moved back here in 2011 from Columbus, Ohio, and I worked at Marvel for 10 and a half years.
Yeah.
So I was there for quite a while before, I decided to go off on my own and
do my
thing.
So what was it how long were you thinking about going out on your own, and then what was it that ultimately pushed you over that?
It was just ready. It was just time for a change, nothing, against the shop, nothing like that. It was time for me to move, and kind of do something different. I moved at kind of towards the end of, the tail end of the pandemic. Things were extremely busy, and I just needed to take a step back and kind of do my own thing. I was booking out, quite a ways with just appointments, and being in such a busy kind of high volume shop, I felt like it was taking away from like my client's experience, because it was constantly people in and out, constantly asking questions, so I just wanted to take a step back, kind of relax and, just kind of focus more on my clients, and that kind of thing.
And just have a more intimate kind of an experience. Cause Marvel's a big shop.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I think there's like 7 or 8 people there now. Mm-hmm. And I think at the height of it, we had, 7 tattooers, and then 3 piercers. Yeah. So, and everybody stayed busy. It was a very, very big, very high volume shop, when you get that many people, together, as there's differences of opinions and
lots of dynamics.
And things functioned great there. It wasn't like it was dysfunctional or, nobody got along, but it was just time for me to kind of take a step out of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like Marvel's always been one of the more top tier tattoo shops in the Michiana area. I think it has been for a long time. As long as I've been around, it's always attracted the higher caliber artists to that shop. And so, yeah, I think that's a good starting point, But yeah, it's good to see you able to just kind of go out, do your own thing, and then just be immersed in your own, vibe and environment constantly. You don't get to have that freedom when you work at a shop that's filled with a lot of artists like that. You're confined to that little cubicle that you're in, and that's the extent of your creativity. So
yeah, and they didn't want like controlled clutter. You know what I mean? They wanted things
clean,
to be very, very clean, very like everything has its place, and that kind of thing. And I'm a fan of stuff and trinkets and knickknacks, and so not being able to have any of that stuff.
Yeah.
I just like having stuff to look at. And I feel like my even clients, people, they like having things to look at.
Yeah.
I have clients I've been tattooing for 10 years that they came to Edwardsburg. They come here, and every time they come in, no matter how many times they come in, like, oh, how long have you had that? I'm like, oh, it's been here since I opened. So it kind of creates that that interest again. They're always seeing something new. It's not the same thing when they walk in every single time.
Yeah.
And I just like that feeling. I think it sparks creativity. I use a lot of my own stuff, as photo reference, which is great. Like, I don't have to search Google for, something. I can just take a photo of it that I own,
right.
Set it up, and, so I think that helps,
Yeah. So, yeah, you got a ton of taxidermy, like a ton of photo references, cool ravens here. And you said you consider this more of a street shop now. How do you define that? Like, because you still do a lot of custom work.
Yeah. I guess, like, when I say street shop, it's definitely more, like, we take more walk-ins, and that kind of stuff on the fly, not so much just appointment-based like a private studio is.
And are you getting a lot of walk-ins here on a regular basis?
We get a good amount, being new, and being, kind of busy, with appointments and that kind of stuff and traveling. It's, I finally took a step in, I'm working with, a social media person to kind of help push that, more than just relying on opening the shop and,
Sure.
Google and that kind of thing. So, we get a handful of them. It's not like super busy, but I think everything right now is just, on a downward slope. It's just slower, everywhere. So, but we do still get a decent amount of walk-ins and, a decent amount of, like, same day appointments, that kind of thing. And, so.
Yeah. How many artists are working here now?
So we have 4 total, including myself.
And
so
piercings too, or no?
No, okay. No piercings, just tattoos. So yeah.
And the artists that are with you now, were they all with you in Edwardsburg too, or is it different artists now, or some of the same, some new?
Yeah. So Zara stayed with me. We've been working together for, I think, 3 years now. I think it's when she came on. She came around. Yeah, 3 years was this year. Cody and Charlotte both came on this year. So Cody came around, I think like around March, if I believe, and then Charlotte joined, a month or 2 later. So
okay. And do you cover a pretty wide arrangement of styles, like realism, traditional? Like, what's the vibe in the shop?
Yeah. So Cody and Zara do a lot of just like kind of like black work kind of stuff. Charlotte is, her stuff's really kind of eclectic and kind of almost psychedelic.
Kind of her
in a
own
way,
style.
like, yeah, it's kind of like, it's very interesting. I don't really know how to, how I would describe it. And then, I do pretty much everything with the exception of like photorealism. I came up in a time of tattooing where like you had to do everything.
Right.
Like you couldn't focus on just doing one thing or another. And, I did a certain style of tattooing for a handful of years and just, there towards the tail end, it just got boring doing the same thing.
Yeah.
No matter how many times you redraw it, it's still the same images, and that kind of thing. So I like doing a wide variety of stuff. So there's not too much that we don't or that we can't tackle.
What's your favorite style to tattoo? Like, when somebody walks in, what do you get really super amped about doing?
I like weird stuff. I like being able to just kind of like do things that are, kind of skewed, multiple eyeballs, weird kind of creepy stuff. And a lot of floral. I like mixing the two. I really enjoy doing a combo between like, doing like a more stippled kind of, black, work with, mixing, an element of, some subject matter that has color in it, so it creates a nice dynamic, between the two.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you, do you have some of this flash here that's yours? Like, have you drawn some of this flash?
Very few. The poster that's right behind you, that I did years ago. Mm-hmm. I don't have a ton of my stuff up. I tend to do it, and then it hides on my iPad.
Yeah.
I've been getting a little bit more into doing some stuff on wood block and kind of getting back into, like, color pencil and that kind of thing, kind of mixing, doing, like, some more mixed media stuff with, like wood burning, engraving, color pencil and that kind of thing. So
yeah, I see a lot of your work has a very traditional feel to it, mm-hmm. In some instances. Some of the insects that I've seen you tattoo have that kind of traditional kind of spin to them or whatever, and I think it's very solid, saturated tattoos like a traditional tattoo would be.
Yeah, so. Yeah, I like things that are going to last. Yeah. I like things that, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, like you can still look at it and you can be like, yeah, like, what that is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. So, things have been slow for sure. This is not like a heavily saturated area for tattoo shops, like right down here in downtown Niles.
There's three. There's three within 3 blocks.
Really?
Yeah. So there's one, literally I have a tattoo shop on either side of the block. So with me, the ones, I believe more of like an appointment only kind of studio. I could be wrong,
private studio.
I think so. Yeah. Like they're definitely, I think they work more by appointment. The other one is definitely more of like a walk-in, kind of same like street shop kind of vibe. So. And
do you know them? Do you got, how's the, cause sometimes it's funky, you know what I mean? Like how's the community here? The tattoo community.
Man, I know the couple of the girls that work down, at the more private studio. They're super nice. The other shop I really don't know. I've met a couple of the guys at the other store that have come in, but I just stay to myself. I just do my thing.
Just busy doing your thing.
Yeah, I don't. I guess I just don't. Like associate a lot with others.
Yeah, how much in tune are you to the way, the industry's changing in regards to regulations and just all the things that are happening in tattooing today? Are you keeping tuned into that stuff, or are you just kind of like?
Yeah, for the most part, as much as I can. I try to stay updated as much as I can as far as, what's going on. Some of it's way above my head, and I just don't understand some of the stuff that they're doing or what's going on. I know we just had a big change here in Michigan with the numbing cream and the numbing sprays. And I'm indifferent about it. I let my clients, before it was passed that you can't, I'd let my clients use it. I think a lot of it is just, tattooers and clients both not doing their due diligence, to do research and that kind of thing. And so when you just, buy anything you can find online and throw it on somebody, you're going to have, complications and reactions to it.
Yeah, it's kind of wild to me when I sit and think about it, because even with Electrum, I made a few numbing products, which I don't make anymore. We stopped making them for various reasons. But when I sit and I think about it, I'm like, when the fuck did lidocaine even become a thing in tattooing? You know what I mean? Like, that's still a fairly recent thing. Like, 5 years ago, even, I don't even think people were putting shit on their tattoos to kill the pain, right?
Yeah, it's as recent as like the wireless stuff, it kind of came around the same time that the wireless, pens and machines kind of came about, is kind of when, the whole like numbing thing came about. And I think a lot of it was, or is, like the impatience of not only the client, but the tattooer.
Right.
They're like, we can, if we can numb this and get, this whole leg sleeve done in 3 days.
Without my client jumping all over the table on me.
As opposed to being like, it's going to take us, 6 months to a year, consistently of working on this. I just want to do it in one shot to get a photo.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have an opinion one way or the other. Like I said, we made numbing products for a while. So, I mean, obviously, we were supporting that for a bit. But I never had I've used it myself, I used it on my whole back piece, when I sat on that thing for 32 hours getting my back done, It's almost a necessity at that point, But it's like, I never used it prior to that, and I don't know that I would use it again unless I really needed it, But I just, I think the big piece with lidocaine and just tattoo products in general is just the lack of education around the products, right? Or, what's in the products, how to properly use the products, where are the products coming from, It's like, lidocaine's a big one, I've talked about it a lot. It's like, you as an artist, do you know the difference between a 5% and a 7%, or what epinephrine does to someone? I think generally most people probably don't know those things.
Yeah, and that's where it comes up doing your due diligence, right? Like, and looking into it. And any of my clients in the past that have wanted to use it, I'm like, here's the products that I've experimented with myself, on my wife, my close personal friends or clients. I'm like, order it. When you get it, do a small test spot in the area that you want to get tattooed. Follow the directions, like, and I kind of break it down so it's a little more understanding, because some of the directions are very loose, or, they don't really explain things. I'm like, and see how your skin reacts to it, and then we could take it from there, but I think the big issue is just people are like, oh, I can get tattooed without feeling it. So they numb it before they come in, and then they want the sprays, and then they want to re-numb it, and, and I think that's where the big issue came in, why Michigan took the steps to pass, the laws that they did.
Like overusing it and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, because you can get lidocaine poisoning.
Yeah.
Like, that's what people don't realize is, like, whether it's 4%, 5%, 10%, whatever's in it, right? Like, if you continuously use it, you can get lidocaine poisoning from it. So
it's like any substance, It's like even like over-the-counter drugs, it has recommended usage, what I mean? A lot of the lidocaine stuff that we have out in the tattoo space, when you flip it over, it doesn't even necessarily say what the recommended usage is or even how to properly use it, and I think products like that should have like instructional videos, there should be like a medical professional kind of explaining, like, as an artist, this is how you should use this on your client,
Yeah, I definitely think there needs to be a little bit more looked into it, right? Like, because, like, what they say, 4%'s the legal amount that you can buy. That's what
5
is it 5?
Yeah.
So because I know like Bactine Max is like 4%,
yeah,
or something like that, and like in Michigan went so far as to list Bactine Max in the law.
Yeah, because it's got lidocaine in it.
Yeah, which is rare that they would actually list a specific product.
And they say you have to have a prescription, right?
Yeah, so not a prescription. You just have to have a note from a doctor.
Okay.
So it's a weird wording.
Okay.
There's, I'm on part of the Michigan Tattooers like Facebook group, and there's a handful of people on there that have found a way. Kind of I don't want to say a loophole per se, but kind of like a loophole of like, well, you don't have to have a doctor's prescription. You just have to have your doctor write you a note saying that you're clear to use,
right?
Bactine or whatever it might be.
Right. So that's weird though, because I wonder, like, does that shift their liability then? Because, like, let's just say you have a doctor's note to use lidocaine, and you're not you specifically, but just any artist.
Yeah.
You have a note. Your client has to have the note, or you
have
have
so
to?
Your client has to have it.
Okay.
So not the tattooer themselves, but your client has to have the note.
So at that point, then it's basically the client is assuming the risk.
Yeah.
And the liability.
Yep.
So you're protected as an artist if they bring that in.
Yeah. Yeah, but if they come in with the note and they come in with like a, like Bactine Max or whatever, and they want to use it, towards the tail end or whatever it is.
That's on them.
Yep. Then their doctor has given them the okay to use it, and according to Michigan law, then that gives me the okay to use it. I just have to keep that record, with their file.
On their consent form, like stapled to the consent form, whatnot.
Yeah.
Now, do you have to put a clause in your consent form about using lidocaine products?
They haven't mentioned anything about it yet.
Okay.
So there wasn't anything before. They haven't mentioned anything, as of late. So not that I know of. I haven't gotten an email from my health department. The only email I got was just the updated, like, we're not allowed to use it.
Now, coming from St. Joe County, where the licensing requirements I consider to be pretty strict, right? You actually have to go through a process to get a license to tattoo in St. Joe County.
Yeah.
What's it like here in this? What county is Niles?
So we're Berrien County.
Okay.
Here in the state of Michigan itself, as far as I know, some counties might be different, but most of them are just a tattoo shop license. So in St. Joe County, every artist has to be licensed as well as the tattoo shop. Here, it's just the shop.
And how difficult is that to get?
It's not. It's, you pay them, they come in, they do the inspection of the shop, you know, and as long as, I mean, you have to write, like, it was different coming from, you know, like St. Joe County, opening my shop in Edwardsburg, which is Cass County, which is a very rural county. I think that guy when I opened my shop, he only had one other tattoo shop he inspected. So he did all the restaurants, he did all the, like, well inspections, sewer, you know, like septic. So tattoo shops was just kind of those things that threw on. So I helped him quite a bit, just to kind of get a little more familiar with stuff. But you have to submit a floor plan, you know, of how the shop is laid out. There are certain, like, booth requirements, like size-wise, you know, which I think is 45 square feet, you know, so it's like half of...
Like a minimum 45 square feet.
Yeah, like, so, which is like, I mean, you can fit, you know, I think it's, you know, it's like pretty much like a 10 by 10, you can fit, you know, 2 artists in, you know.
But do you have to have a sink in every booth here?
So
is there those kind of requirements like that? 1
sink per 3 artists is what they have on the book. So you can have 1 sink per 3 artists, and then, you know, it's kind of loosely written too, you know, because like if you have a private studio, you could have 6 artists that work there, and you can be like, only 3 of us work at a time.
Sure,
you know?
sure.
So it's, you know, that kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting. That's one of the most interesting things about talking to all these different artists in different places, is really getting an education on how things vary from county to county and from state to state, you know. And it's kind of one of those things where I think, like, that's like the next evolution in our business, you know. It's like, I feel like people in high places are really trying to pressure us to standardize a lot of the things that we do, you know.
Yeah, without any real knowledge, though. They don't know why they're doing it.
Well, they're doing it for the same reason they do it in restaurants or hair salons or any other place, you know.
Yeah, you know, but they don't understand why. You know what I mean? Like, they're just like, we're just going to do this because we think it sounds good. You know, we've talked to nobody, you know, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like in Michigan, like there's a few things that, you know, like it's kind of left up to like the health department's interpretation.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, I do agree with you in that regard. But I think what really drives it is just the concern for public safety.
Yeah.
Right? And so, you know, just, dude, because between me and you, and probably you can attest to this too, I'm sure you've been in a lot of tattoo shops, you know. It's across the board, you know, night and day, depending on what door you walk in. You know,
Yep.
You don't know what you're going to get. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't know if you're going to walk into a clean establishment. You don't know if the owner of that establishment, you know, cleans his shop the way he's supposed to clean it. You don't know if you go around and do a spore test in that place, what's gonna come back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, same thing with manufacturing. You know, it's the same way. It's like you don't know where a lot of these products are being manufactured or who they're being manufactured by. You don't know if they're really sterilizing products, even though they say they are. You don't know if what's in that bottle is what's really listed on the label in the ingredients deck.
Yeah.
There's just not a lot of transparency there. You know what I mean? And I think that ultimately is what has driven a lot of this, because like the FDA will go out and they'll just randomly grab some products or something, you know, and they'll take them back to their labs and they'll test them, and they'll reverse engineer them, and they'll break them down, and they'll say, wait a minute, there's 3 more things in this bottle than what's listed on this label. You know, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Or, oh, there's microorganisms in this tattoo ink. That's a problem. That's bacteria. You know, so then they come back to the manufacturers and they start pressuring people, and they want to know, like, hey, are you manufacturing under GMP? Are you ISO certified? Are you really, where's your sterilization certificates? You know, where's the proof that you sterilized this stuff like you said you did? So I think it's good for overall, especially for the artist, because you'll eventually have peace of mind in knowing that the products that you're bringing in your shop and that you're paying for have been like properly scrutinized and they are being properly manufactured.
Yeah. I think there's always good and bad, you know, when it comes to something getting more popular, like tattooing, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I think a lot of the steps are good, and they definitely are for the welfare, you know, the better welfare of the client and the artist, right?
Yeah.
You know, and then you're always going to have those instances where, you know, like people just are uneducated and they just overstep.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah. I think you got to find that balance.
You know, yeah, absolutely.
Where did your tattoo career start? You know, like what got you interested in tattooing, and you know, how did you end up in this career path?
So nobody in my family up until, you know, probably 10 years ago or so, maybe a little longer, had tattoos, right? Like, so, I remember when I was a little kid, I went to this little grocery store in Buchanan where I grew up, and there was this biker dude in there, and he had this big Grim Reaper on his arm. All he had on was like a leather vest, and if, he had a leather vest, like gold chains, just looked really cool. And he had this big Grim Reaper on his arm. And ever since then, I was stoked, right? I was like, that's so rad. Like, like I want a tattoo, and I think I was like, 5, or 6, something like that, and I remember like, as I got older, it just never kind of went away. I got my first tattoo at 15, and once I got tattooed, that just took me down, the path. And this was, I'm 41 now, so this was, the internet was barely a thing.
Yeah.
We still had a butler that looked things up. If you young kids don't know, that was Ask Jeeves.
I do remember. I haven't heard Ask Jeeves in a long time.
Like, it's funny when I bring it up to my clients because they're like, "What's that?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, of course." Like now I'm the old guy.
Yeah.
But I got tattooed, and then I was really it really was just interesting to me. I was really interested, and I've always been kind of a tinkerer. So I figured out how to build a tattoo machine similar like the way they do in prisons. I took apart my mom's sewing machine. I took apart my Discman. I did a couple really terrible tattoos on a friend of mine. And then one of my mom's friends had an old Spalding and Rogers tattoo kit that I got from him. And it just kind of like just went from there. I was tattooing on, my friends, my sister's friends,
Yeah. So completely self-taught.
Yeah. I had a short-term apprenticeship, it didn't last very long. There were, it was still, even back then in the early 2000s, it was still a little rough around the edges, it wasn't. So, I think I had an apprenticeship for like 6 months. And when I got fired from that, I really wasn't sure, kind of you get that doubt in your mind, right?
Yeah,
It's like, and it's not like this area here is, flooding or, it doesn't, back then it didn't have a ton of tattoo shops. There wasn't a ton around. It wasn't, it was definitely way more of a secretive industry.
Sure.
So, but I stuck with it. I ended up getting a job, at a shop in Goshen and like just jumped in head first, in 2003.
What shop were you at in Goshen?
So, was it Tattoos Unlimited?
Was that the one like right on the main drag across from the liquor store?
It was down. It wasn't across. The only thing on the other side of the street was the train track. So there's down past, like way past where Electrum is, down into Goshen. There's like that little section where like all the fast food spots are.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of congested. It was in like a little strip mall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of
in that little building that kind of went diagonally.
Yeah. Yep. So I worked there.
I remember that spot.
They smoked in there. Chain smoked like crazy. Everything was yellow. I
remember.
Yeah. So I got a job there. That was the first place that I ever got a job.
Okay. That's interesting that you were there because I know all the dirt about that shop, right? Like, because for a long time after that shop, Goshen wouldn't allow tattoo shops in Goshen. Did you know that?
So I didn't know that. I know they were the only one there.
Yeah.
And I remember specifically it was really funny. They always, back then radio ads were a huge thing. So they did this whole thing with the radio to where they had like a tattoo contest. It was like the radio came, set up, did a tattoo contest.
Yeah.
And I remember specifically Todd sent some of his clients down there. Todd from Marvel sent some of his clients down there, and he just like swept the board, like just took everything home, and it was really funny because the owner of the shop was really upset about it. Like, his stuff didn't win anything. Like, and he was trying to do it for like a whole promotional thing of the shop, and so.
Yeah, I don't know all the reasons, and I'm not even gonna like put anything out there. But I do remember that Goshen did not want to have another tattoo shop after that tattoo shop left.
Yeah, there were some interesting things that went down there, to say the least.
Yeah,
it was it definitely was not on the up and up, to say, without going into detail too much.
Right. So it's interesting because Jake Kinsey, I think, was the first person that he lobbied in Goshen for a couple of years to try to get them to let him have a tattoo shop there. And they finally relented and said, okay, you can have a tattoo shop here, but we don't want any signage out in the front. We don't want it saying tattoos. We don't want, it was very restricted, the rules that they put, and then they're like, you're basically going to be on probation for, a year. And then if everything's good for a year and we don't get any complaints, then we can have discussions, and eventually they let them put tattoos and piercings in the window, so they kind of started loosening up. Now there's maybe 3 tattoo shops in Goshen again.
Okay.
But yeah, dude, God, I bet it was freaking dozen years that there was no tattoo shops in Goshen because
because of that shop. Yeah. Listen, man, good for Goshen, right? Like that doesn't surprise me at all. Cause I definitely, being there and knowing what went on, behind those doors, I definitely,
Yeah. But you know what, dude? I mean, look, that's just the way things been in the past. You know what I mean? Like, you go back into the 80s and 90s in the tattoo shops, you know what I mean? And it was very much that kind of a scene,
yeah.
So just some people still, that's what I mean. You don't know what you're going to get when you walk into a tattoo shop nowadays. I mean, more or less you're going to get a professional atmosphere, but every once in a while you'll still run into one of those old biker shops, you know what I mean? Or you'll run into one of those old street shops that's just been nitty gritty since the 1980s, man.
Yeah, man, the floor hasn't been changed since they opened, and
it's still there, man.
It's black and white checkered floor. That's just it's brown and white because all the dirt and ink and everything else, cigarette ash that's been ground into it. Yeah,
there's a lot of history in that place.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stories. It's nostalgic. When I try to visit. As I travel the country, I try to visit. Like I try to look up some of the older shops. We try to go in there just to see. Just
those are the best ones to go into.
Yeah,
honestly, I mean,
they've got character. There's soul there,
That's where the rich history of tattooing exists, you know? So that's why I'm so grateful for, the Tattoo Heritage Project and, just some of these people that are really diehard memorabilia collectors. And, they really work, like Troy from Villain Arts, really. He just started setting up the tattoo museum at the Villain Arts shows now. So he's got this. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, so I saw it in New Orleans, but he's basically it's like maybe 3 booths wide, but he's just bringing in old tattoo memorabilia from people and has it in display cases, and you can go up and check stuff out. And a lot of old hand-drawn flash sheets and old machines, built by some of the legendary people. And it's just cool to see that stuff.
Yeah, it's always, doing with, we'll get into the other business, but even coming across some of that stuff that I do, that's just been buried away in a barn somewhere, that they had no idea, their great grandpa, had it from whenever, it's really cool to see all that old stuff. Rich T down in Ohio has a nice little museum down there as well. It's always awesome. I haven't been to a tattoo convention. It's been a year. I did Iowa last year.
Yeah.
But I haven't been to a Villain Arts show. They always seem to fall on weekends that, I've got other things going on or whatever.
Well, and you're doing a lot of different stuff now, too.
Yeah.
It's hard to put yourself everywhere.
Yeah.
You've created a nice little empire for yourself,
I'm trying, man. I'm just having fun.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. I don't, I don't work. You know what I mean? I have things that I really enjoy that, that pay my bills. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm really just out here trying to live my best life and have fun doing it.
Yeah.
I don't want to be stressed, and I don't want to be stressed coming to work. You know what I mean? I don't want it to look at it as a job. Once I start looking at something as a job, it's time to go on. Especially with doing creative stuff and the stuff that like tattooing. I feel like once you start looking at it as a job, then you're really not putting your all into it, and then you're just doing things to get by.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I get that, man. Totally get that. So as far as a tattoo shop goes, you're running your own business now. You're responsible for everything. You're responsible for your taxes. You're responsible for rent, utilities, making sure all your other artists are happy and content. Do you supply all the supplies here? Or?
No, so I supply pretty much everything with the exception of gloves, ink, needles.
So you got that responsibility too. You got to make sure all your artists have the stuff they need to do their job every day. So are you managing that stuff? Is Heather helping you? Your wife Heather, is she helping you manage a lot of that stuff?
She manages the other store.
Okay.
Well, that whole thing has become a whole monster in itself. So, the supplies here, everybody makes it sound like it's such a huge and difficult issue to run a tattoo studio or open, a tattoo shop. And maybe it's just because every shop that I've been in, I've kind of taken that role and I haven't just walked in, tattooed, and left. You know,
Sure.
I've always wanted to make sure things function smoothly. You know, like not only myself, but everybody had what they needed. So for me to do it on my own was just, you know, it wasn't anything different. You know, like I just had to buy a little more supplies, you know, and that was pretty much it. But it's pretty easy, man. Like it's, you know, we have a pretty good system. You know, it's once things get low, you know, and I'm not saying that it you know, it never fails, because, you know, there's been times where I've ran out of, you know, stencil paper, you know, where I'm like, shit, I just took the last sheet, you know, and like everybody's got a full day of tattoos. So I'm like texting my friends, you know.
You're like, can I come over and borrow a couple sheets of paper?
Yeah, you know, so, you know, where I'm like, I thought I had an extra box, you know, and, you know, but, you know, we just, you know, we try to keep things, you know, stocked, and, you know, I tend to overbuy, you know, because I'm a firm believer in, like, if I overbuy, then I have it, you know, versus like, you know, say times get tough, right? And I'm like, well, I need to place this $500 order, and I don't have that right now.
Yeah.
You know, so I tend to stock up, you know, pretty well on most things, and, yeah, it's pretty easy, man. I just make sure everybody, you know, we kind of treat it, you know, I'm like this. I tell everybody, like, this is what I supply. This is what I like to use. If you want to use something different, you're more than welcome to buy your own, you know. So I'm not ordering, you know, 8 different types of ointments and, you know, 7 different types of bandages and, you know, different heat caps. I'm like, this is what I supply, you know, and if you
want something different, then you have to get it on your own.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I try to make it as easy as possible. I buy, you know, like I don't supply Allegory, you know, for the shop, you know, but I do when I order it. I order, you know, multiple bottles of it, and then if they need one, they literally just pay me what it costs, so they don't have to worry about ordering or running out. You know, I always have like certain things like that stocked, you know, just in case.
Yeah, I just asked that question because you made the comment that you don't really work, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes I'm like, man, it'd be nice to just be able to go to the tattoo shop and just do tattoos all day, and then just come home and all I got to worry about today is just those tattoos I'm doing.
Yeah.
You know, I think that a lot. You know, 'cause
Yeah.
the more you build your business and the more you take on, you know, you just obviously stress comes with that. You know, so I'm just curious. You know, I was asking that question just because I'm curious to know, like, has any of those shop owner stresses burdened you at all? You know, has it taken away from your ability to just have the fun that you have tattooing?
You know, here and there, it definitely, you know, certain things come up, you know, to where it's like, it'd be so much easier just to not own this place, and, you know, just to be able to come in and be like, oh, that's your problem, not mine, you know?
Exactly.
You know, but it's still not bad. You know, you know, I think I try to set things up, you know, to where, like, even if something does come up that's, you know, that happens, that's unfortunate, you know, whatever it might be, things still function smoothly. You know, even for being a really small shop, even when, you know, like when I first opened, it was just me, you know, I had a thermofax, and literally the smallest issue possible, but I was like, I'm going to go out and buy another one. I mean, so I ran over, you know, to your store and bought another one, you know, just so now I have 2, right? So I have a backup. Yeah. You know, it's like, I try to keep, you know, like, those are the biggest, I think the biggest, like, you know, the biggest things that come up, you know, is those expensive purchases, right? Like, that's, you know, like, we're fortunate to have, you know, like, your supply shop local, right? To where some people don't have that, to where, like, I can drive 40 minutes and go get pretty much anything I need, you know, in a bind, if that's the case, if I don't have it. So,
The Business of Tattooing is brought to you by Electrum Supply, the industry leader in high-quality tattoo supplies designed by artists for artists. Whether you need premium stencil products, top-tier cartridges, or game-changing aftercare, Electrum has you covered with innovative, artist-tested solutions you can trust. Want to elevate your work? Head over to electrumsupply.com and stock up on the best gear in the business. And because you're a listener of The Business of Tattooing, use code PODCAST10 at checkout for 10% off your next order. Stay sharp, stay stocked, and stay ahead with Electrum Supply.
But I can't really say I've had a whole bunch of stresses. You know, it's, you know, dealing with landlords, you know, certain issues that come up with buildings. But I think, you know, there's a, you know, as much as, like, most tattooers either don't want to say anything, or they don't, you know, in fear of, like, getting kicked out, or they're overly aggressive about getting problems done, you know, getting, like, you know, things, you know, situated. There's a very, you know, you have to be very stern on certain things, and you have to kind of know, you know, what you can and can't do legally. Right. You know, so, but those are the biggest stresses. And, like, the supplies, that kind of stuff. That's not, it takes, 20 minutes, out of my day if I just sit down and do it to be like, hey, like I need this, 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 and this.
Right.
So, but yeah, I think just the landlord and like that kind of stuff has been the most stressful part about opening a shop.
Yeah. So what is your favorite thing right now in tattooing? Like when you're scrolling social media and you see things, like what's inspiring you? What keeps your fire lit today?
The innovation, like the innovation of machines. Like I said, I've always been a tinkerer, right? So like I've always been interested in how things work. So it's really interesting to see, how far, the rotaries come from, even, 5-7 years ago.
Yeah.
Like they were just kind of starting to come out, and it might have been a little longer than that, but, over the last handful of years, it's like you go into a convention and it's quiet.
Yeah.
I
did hear a couple of coils zapping.
Yeah. Coils are Dan Cubans, like you normally will hear those, but it's really interesting. Just like, that's kind of what keeps me going. And then seeing like these young kids, these kids that have been tattooing 6 months, a year, 2 years that are just killing it.
Yeah.
And they're doing stuff that's, it's going to hold, you know what I mean? Like it's going to look good, not just now, but
they're getting them in there.
Like it's, like they're doing really nice saturated stuff. Like, and that just, it kind of shows you like having, more accessible resources, what it does, to an industry and to a business like that. So, but yeah, a lot of it's just the innovation of stuff. I like seeing where products are going, and, I buy things just to take them apart to see the inner workings.
Sure.
Like I'll spend $1,000 on a machine to take it apart. I shouldn't,
I hope you're putting it back together too.
Yeah, for the most part, I've ruined a couple, but I'm always interested to know what other people are doing, in that regard.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'm a firm believer that the better you understand your tools, the better you can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, who's your favorite artist? Do you have a favorite artist or artists?
Man, I don't. Like I enjoy a wide variety of things. You know what I mean? And with everything, I couldn't even tell you, like, I'd recognize tattoos, but I don't even look at the name. You know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things. Like, with everything going on, I've just kind of gotten away from, but there's not much out there, man. I was never a fan of like photorealism or like color realism for the longest time, just for the longevity's sake, and seeing some of the stuff these people are doing now. And like, I appreciate it, like it's, so, but I really like a lot of the heavy kind of black work, kind of stuff. And
yeah, I agree.
Like that kind of stuff. Like a lot of I got really big into the geometric stuff for quite a while. And I still do a good amount of it, and that stuff's always I really enjoy seeing,
you
that
like
kind
doing
of stuff.
lines.
Yeah. I came up, like in a traditional setting, so, like I'm, like I want to outline everything, you know what I mean? Like that's, so I like that. I like, a good, solid, smooth outline.
Are you using coils or rotaries now?
Rotaries.
Wireless?
So, both. So I use a lot of Dan Cubans to line stuff with, and then, I use, critical torque, and I have a Century operative that's a relatively, like, that machine's relatively newer, came out I think at the end of last year. Really interesting. It runs off of like it's got like a magnetic kind of drive system, and it's very coil like, but it's in a pen.
Okay.
So
yeah, the Century, I've heard of those.
Yeah. Yeah, super interesting machine.
Are they kind of heavy?
No. I got one right here. They're super light.
Oh, wow, that's a weird looking thing.
Yeah. But it's really comfortable too.
Looks like a damn transformer or something. Optimus, roll out.
Yeah. That's how I feel with some of them, man.
That's wild. Wow. So do you have grips you can put on this, or?
So those come off, the little black like things. Those will bolt off, and you can just take them off or put those on.
Interesting. So, what is this for?
So that's where the battery goes.
Okay,
So it just takes like the similar like kind of vape batteries.
Gotcha.
Just those little guys.
Gotcha.
There.
And so that just holds the battery in.
Yep. Yeah, it's got a magnetic
okay
connection in it. So.
Okay. Powerful thing, though, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good for lining and everything.
Yeah, man, it'll work really well for lining. It makes noise. It's got that like audible feedback, so you can really hear.
You can tell the way it's hitting the skin. Yeah.
Yep. So, but yeah, I use a wide variety of things. I'm always, I'm not looking. There's nothing out there that's going to make my tattoos better. I just try to find things that are going to make it, a little more efficient.
Yeah. Easier.
So.
Right. Yeah. So, speaking of that, AI. How do you feel about AI? You been using AI at all?
I dabble in it here and there. Just like playing around. I use it as a tool, right? Like I don't have an opinion on either way. I think it, to say that I haven't used it would be a lie, because there's been some things where I've been kind of stumped on how to create something. So, I'll type it into AI to give me like a visual, kind of idea. But yeah, I really don't have an opinion on it. I'm not one of those people that's sternly against it.
Right.
So I think it's, it's a tool. It's in a lot of ways I feel like it's no different than, like you buying Procreate stamps, from big companies and just using those and stamping, things here and there, and then just erasing what you need to and calling it your tattoo.
Right. Yeah, so. AI is interesting, and even earlier you mentioned like Ask Jeeves,
Mm-hmm.
And I AI is interesting to me because I'm very interested in it. I'm studying it all the time, and I'm just trying to figure out how I can plug it into my business and make things easier. And what can I do to streamline processes, and things like that. And if I could do 10 things yesterday, can I do 30 things today if I'm using AI? You know what I mean? So things like that. But I think about AI a little bit differently, because to me, I feel like AI has really been around for quite a long time. Like, even if you think about Ask Jeeves, to me, that's a form of AI, like, sort of. Do you remember back in it had to be in the 80s, right? Max Headroom. Do you remember Max Headroom on MTV?
I don't.
You don't? So Max Headroom was this digital, like, DJ that was on MTV. And he would come on your screen and he would be like glitchy and, like, this kind of stuff.
Okay.
But to me, that was a form of AI, right? It was like an artificially created being that interacted with people through TV or whatever.
Okay.
So I think AI has just kind of been here for a long time. We just never really called it that.
Yeah, I could see that.
And now it's just evolved to this point. Now we're on the horizon of super intelligence, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the next thing that they say AI is going to create super intelligence, right? And so when you think about that, you're like, whoa, holy shit, what does that mean, really, for humanity?
Terminator. I'm telling you, all we got to do is watch movies and shit from the past, man. This is what we're going towards. As soon as they start making T-1000s and everything else, we're screwed.
Well, they're already making robots.
So that's what I'm saying, but it evolves, right?
There's already robots tattooing on people.
Yeah. Yeah, I watched a whole podcast on that with that I think what was that, like Bang NYC or whatever. I think they got one in their shop. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
they're working with that black dot thing or whatever, but that's interesting to me. I'd like to go see that because I just don't get it.
I think it caters to a certain type of person, right? I think it caters towards your kind of higher end influencer type of person that,
just wants to make some content.
Because there's no there's no intimacy to it.
Right.
You literally go in, you stick your arm or your leg or whatever in a machine, it does this tattoo and you leave.
I just don't get it though. I don't understand how a machine can tattoo somebody properly or consistently.
Well, and my thing is what happens if they twitch?
That's what I'm saying.
They, because they're not I haven't seen them, but I'm going to assume there's not so much of a tube set up. You know what I mean? To where the needle's just, I would imagine in my mind anyways, that needle's hanging out there. So if you twitch, I think buries it in your arm and it doesn't stop,
I just have so many questions, even last night I was watching YouTube videos. I watch these. I think the internet is such a great tool today. if you wanted to learn how to become a tattoo artist, you could learn how to tattoo just by watching YouTube videos. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many really highly skilled tattoo artists out there putting out educational content. You know, last night I was watching a YouTube video. I don't remember the artist because it was just scrolling.
Yeah.
I wasn't paying attention to it. But the video was talking about the angle that you hold your needle at for liners, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're using like a 3 or a 5 round, you know, then you have it at this angle. But when you're using a 11, 14, or 18, you have to hold it more vertical, because if you're holding it like this, all those needles aren't penetrating the skin, whereas they do in a 3 or 5. So I'm like, how could a machine, not to say you couldn't teach a machine to do that, but how's a machine gonna, like, how does a machine recognize those kind of problems? You know what I mean? Like how?
Yeah, I don't know. I would imagine it's just a straight vertical like setup.
Like it's just,
you know what I mean? It's just straight
up and down.
Yeah. Because I don't think, like, to my understanding, at least the thing that I know about it and what I've seen is it's only doing like little fine line, micro kind of like tattoos, you know, little fonts and like real simple stuff.
It's not, does it need to change between liners and shaders?
No, it's doing strictly
like
just black like dot work, you know,
stippling kind of stuff.
Yeah, but it's like individual dots, you know, as opposed to like a whip stipple kind of thing.
Interesting.
Like, so that's the way that I understood it, you know, was when they, you know, because they showed a couple photos of, you know, some tattoos that it had done from like lettering and, you know, and that kind of thing. And, you know, I don't know. I like you know, as much as we try to make, you know, tattoos as perfect as we can, right? Like every tattoo has its little flaw or its little hiccup, and that's what I think gives it that life and that character.
Right.
So, like, if you go to a computer that does this thing spot on perfectly, like, what's the point?
Right.
You know, like, it just doesn't have anything to it.
I just have so many questions, man. I need to get that guy on the podcast.
Yeah.
You know, talk to him about that, because another question I had was like, how do they control cross contamination? Where does the blood and plasma go?
Yeah. Like,
nobody's wiping it.
Yeah, like, what are they doing with it, you know, the excess ink flow?
Is it just sucking up into a vacuum or something like that? And then, like, how do you clean that?
But then even that, you would think you would have to kind of, you know, like, disassemble most of it, because maybe it's got an ink cap, you know, that, like, they fill with ink.
Or like a membrane, how cartridges have, or something like that. Yeah. It's got some kind of self-containment system in it or something. Yeah, it's so weird to me.
But I would still be interested to know, because there's always, even with membrane cartridges, there's still flaws. You can still get a backflow issue.
Yeah.
You know, like, so, yeah.
It's so interesting to me, though, because I honestly do believe that not too far in the future, you'll go into bars or restaurants. I mean, hell, there's already restaurants where robots deliver your food. You know? Little R2-D2 things with a tray on top of them, and they bring the stuff to your table.
Yeah, or you just go in most places now, you just go and you punch your order into a screen.
Yeah.
You know, you can order any sit-down restaurant. You can just go. You don't even have to talk to your server. You can just order everything off the little pad that sits on the table.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it'll be like that, though. You'll go to a bar. You won't have a bartender behind the bar. You'll have, like what you're saying, you'll punch what you want to drink. They'll have machines behind the thing. Everything will be controlled. Because think about the problem that bars have with overpouring and like stealing liquor and like filling bottles up with water or whatever. You know what I mean? Those fucking problems. But will AI be able to solve all those kind of problems? You know, like
Well, if you think, like, I mean, even if you go through most, you know, like if you look like McDonald's, for instance, right? Most McDonald's now have an actual like robotic system that does your drinks.
Yeah.
So if you pay attention to the drive-through, like you'll see the cup drops down, it moves around, drops the ice, moves to the things, fills it up. You know, the person literally puts the lid on it and hands it to you.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, it is. It'll be interesting to see the way the world shapes in the next 5 and 10 years. With the AI putting all these people out of jobs. And yeah, it's weird. Probably be a lot more tattoo artists.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've seen, I don't know, man. Like I've seen a lot of shops kind of closing, and a lot of tattooers just, you know, calling it quits.
Yeah,
and not just young ones, not ones that just came on, you know, in the last 5 years when things were hopping, but
25-year veterans.
Yeah, that are like, it's just not what it was, and you know, I've never been this slow, and you know, and I feel for them, like I understand, you know, like, you know, I think there's, you know, you have to evolve with times. You can't just stick to doing what you did for the last 20 years, you know, and hope that it still works.
It's weird though, because what do you do after that? You know, what do you do after you've been a tattoo artist for 25 years? And then all of a sudden you're like, well, fuck it, this ain't working anymore. I guess I'm going to go do, what do you do?
Yeah. You know, because
where do you go from there?
Like I got into tattooing young, you know, and like I started tattooing, like I said, when I was 15, you know, I got started working in a shop when I was, 18, 19, you know, I'm 41, you know, so I mean, I've been tattooing over half my life, you know, it's like, I mean, I have, you know, another business, but if I didn't have that, you know, like what, yeah. You know, like
what would you do? Go work construction or like
construction at factory? Like, you know, it's, you know, most of these dudes are, you know, their hands and their fingers and everything else are tattooed, and as acceptable as they are, like you're not going to walk into, you know, most office jobs, you know,
right,
you know, with, you know, looking like that and being like, oh, hey, I'm here for my job, you know. So, yeah, I don't know, but I've seen a lot of them that have just kind of, you know.
Do you know anybody personally that's closed up?
Nobody personally, no. You know, people, you know, just some shops and stuff like that online, you know, and, you know, some of the guys are, you know, some of the shops I've seen them close because of just like rent increases, you know, new landlords trying to raise their rent astronomically, you know, and that kind of thing. But some are like, it's just not, you know, it's just not profitable. It's not, you know, I can't sustain having the shop open, you know, and that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's an interesting time. You know, I think everything's kind of gone back pre-COVID. You know, it's definitely slowed down to where, like, this will be the first slow season I think anybody's had in, you know, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
You know, to where it definitely is, you know, a lot slower than what it has been.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely feel it in our business too. You know, it's been pretty hard hit for our business. You know, it's one of those situations where I'm like, some days I'm just like, what am I doing today? You know what I mean? And historically, it's never been the case. You know, I'm just like, I've always got shit to do, but it's like, you know, I'm not going to develop new products right now. I'm not going to spend money on things right now. It's just like, you just can't do that. You know, in fact, it's like, how can we reduce expenses and overhead? You know, we gotta conserve and try to weather the storm.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the same thing, I think, with tattooing, you know, it's, you know, really everybody's feeling it across the board, right? Like it's, you know, I think with, you know, not to get into the importing of the tariff side of things, I know you've gone into that, you know, quite a bit, you know, and I know a decent amount about it as well, you know, but that's definitely, you know, hurt and scared a lot of people because all you see is, you know, what you see online. Most people don't know the behind the scenes things, and hell, even most of us don't know the deal with it. We're just, you know, because nobody knows, right? They've just done this whole thing, and nobody knows really what's going on.
You know how it affects you.
So.
You know how it affects your pocketbook.
Yeah.
Right? But even me, I'm like, why? I don't understand the economics behind this.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck is the point of this?
Yeah. Or what, like, nobody knows the actual cost of anything.
Right.
Like, you know, I'm not sure about your manufacturer, but I work with a handful, even small artists overseas that, like, we get stuff in from that are like, oh, we don't know, you know, like, there's a lady that I work with specifically over in the Ukraine that she's a taxidermist. And she's like, we should stop shipping to the U.S. because we don't know how much it's going to cost us. They can't tell us anything. Our post can't tell us anything. You know.
You know, here's my biggest point of confusion in world economics is simply this: like, why is it so much cheaper? Why can China manufacture things so much cheaper than we can in the U.S.? How did it get to that point? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How did it get there? I mean, obvious answers are because it's cheaper labor, but the materials are the same.
Yeah.
Why is a piece of fucking aluminum in China so much cheaper than a piece of aluminum in the United States?
Yeah.
Or is it just because of where it's sourced? Is it because it's sourced there and we're buying all of our aluminum from them? Or like, I don't get it. Even when you go back to like, I was trying to have a big ass, which is the reason why I kind of started a printing company, is because people in the United States were like charging these ridiculous prices for things, right? And I'm just like, dude, I'm not going to pay that. Like, I could go buy a printer and print that banner for freaking 80% less than what you're charging me. And just because you have a piece of equipment, you can charge that much more?
Yeah.
Like, fuck, what?
Yep.
You know, it's crazy. It's so, I just don't understand how world economics got so off balance.
And cost of living, you know, like, you look at it that way too. Why is it so expensive to live here versus other parts of the country or the other parts of the world,
or even just the country?
You know, like, yeah, you know, and it's, Yeah, it's crazy how, like where did it change? Like why is that thing that you buy, from Temu, for example, right? Like that pin that you buy, from Temu that's 79 cents.
Yeah.
When you order that same pin, if you try to place an order for a company, here in the States, it's going to cost you $7 a pin.
It's crazy. Crazy.
Like,
we were just looking at real estate in Elkhart a couple days ago.
Yeah.
And, Greenleaf Boulevard's right on the river there in Elkhart. Mm-hmm. It's all the high $1 million houses down there.
Yeah.
So any river property is going to be expensive, right? So they had this 5,000 square foot, basically like a mansion, on the river on Greenleaf Boulevard. It's $1.3 million, right? Directly across the river on the other side from basically where this house sits, on the opposite side of the river, there's a vacant lot. They want $1 million for the vacant lot. I'm like, how the fuck is a piece of land $1 million? But you can go over here and buy this whole ass fucking 5,000 square foot house for $300,000 more.
Yeah, like, because I can't build that house.
That don't make any fucking sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, and it's fucking football field away from one another. You know what I mean? I'm like, this is crazy.
Yep.
Like, how is this shit so fucked up? So fucked up. You can't even put $100,000 in your house anymore and expect to get it back.
No, not at all.
It's like, sorry, the houses in this neighborhood are never going to be worth more than $500,000. I'm like, well, I just put $100,000 pole barn up out in the backyard. You mean there doesn't add any value to your house? No, it all depends on what other houses in your neighborhood are worth.
All the comps around. Yeah.
What?
It's a wild market, man. Just everything in general is just so crazy. Like, and I feel like the more you get into kind of being, or like the more you get into like the whole business side of things, or like you're looking to kind of set yourself up, life-wise, that's when you really start to look at those things.
Oh, yeah, dude.
And then you start to realize.
I still haven't figured out how to be successful at business.
Oh, man. It's, a wing and a prayer, I guess, right? You hope.
We just get by, bro.
Yeah. And I stress that to so many people. I think people have this misconception that when you own a business, like, you're wealthy. Right? Like, you're rich. They're like, oh, well, you own a business. Like, you're doing fine. I'm like, no, like, I pay my bills, bro. Like, I'm able to put a little bit back. I'm like, but you don't understand how much goes into running a business.
Yeah.
And like, oh, well, it must be nice. Like, you just make your own schedule. I'm like, oh, my own schedule that I go home and work every night too.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie. There are benefits to owning your business, but you're right. It's just like, somebody made a comment to me the other day, like, oh, you're doing real good. And I'm like, well, define real good, because most days I don't feel like I'm doing real good. Most days I want to beat my head against the wall, dude. I'm like, what are you talking about, bro?
I always make the joke, man. I'm always like, like they said, start a business, like, what the fuck was I thinking starting two? Like, why the fuck did I do that? So.
But I wouldn't trade it. I would never want to go to work for somebody else again.
No, man.
Despite all the stresses that come with owning a business, it's just, I do love the freedom that owning your own business brings, and, not having somebody else telling you how to do things is nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of your other business, we're going to go check it out. You have an oddity shop.
Yeah. Yep.
You have a death museum.
Yep.
Which is super interesting, and we'll get into that in the second part of all this.
Yeah, that was kind of an accident, so the business wise.
The oddity shop?
Yeah, it wasn't really something that I put any thought into. It just kind of happened at the other store, or at the other shop.
Yeah.
The private studio. So it was just my own personal stuff. I was just buying stuff because I liked it.
And then you had so much shit, you're like, fuck it, we need two buildings now.
People kept asking me to buy stuff. Like they're like, oh, is that for sale? Is that for sale? And I'm like, well, shit, yeah. Like, what's up? Like, I'll find something new.
Yeah.
So it really, like, it kind of started that way, and and it just kind of grew, from there. And then we kind of grew it, and then we started doing a few shows, and then with the amount of stuff that I had, a buddy of mine was like, man, you should just open a small museum. He's like, it's what I did. He's like, people just kept looking at my stuff. So I was like, I just found a cheap building, opened a small museum, and just charged them $7 to look at it when I started.
Yeah.
And, so we opened the store first, and then, the museum came, a year later, just for, we were looking for a bigger building is really what it was. But yeah, it, it's been an interesting ride, man. These last few years has been good. And I can't complain.
Let's check all that out. Tell the viewers, shop is located here in downtown Niles. What's the address here?
Yep, the shop here is at 115 North 3rd Street in downtown Niles. It's Hell or High Water Tattoo.
And your Instagram?
The Instagram's HOHW Tattoos. Instagram's HOHW Tattoo. And then Facebook's just Hell or High Water Tattoo. There's a few other shops with the same name. We get messages from time to time from people, that don't realize it. And there's one in Kentucky, there's one in New Orleans. I guess there's one in South Dakota. I just found that out the other day. You just have to pay attention to the address, but yeah, we're on social media. We're doing that thing. So.
And your personal Instagram?
Personal Instagram is Ryan A Tattoos.
Okay. All right, cool. Let's go check out the Oddity shop, and thanks for taking some time to talk to me and give me a little bit of inside scoop in your business world.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it.
All right, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. That's a wrap for this episode of The Business of Tattooing. I appreciate you tuning in and being part of this journey to level up the industry one conversation at a time. If you found value in today's episode, do me a favor. Subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another artist who could use this knowledge. Got questions or topics you want me to cover? Hit me up on Instagram at NoFlashNinja or email me at rob@electrumsupply.com. And remember, tattooing is an art, but running a successful business is a skill. Keep pushing, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time on The Business of Tattooing.